Hi everybody, it's Az here from Heel vs Babyface on the beta for Warlords of Draenor. Draenor. There seems to be some to and froing going back. I thought it was Draenor to start with, and then at BlizzCon they kept referring to it as Draenor, and now loads of people are calling it Draenor again. But whatever. Draenor, that place where all the orcs come from, and it's got all the refugees and ting. Anywho. They've released another dungeon for our testing pleasure, and this one is Upper Blackrock Spire. Now you might think, wait a minute, we've done this. This is a vanilla dungeon. Well, this is the level 100 makeover, because everything gets a makeover nowadays, that I've got to say is really heavily intensive on trash. I mean, it's seriously heavily intensive on trash. Now, we get through it one way or another. It wasn't the prettiest of dungeons, I have to confess. There was lots of mistakes made by people. I'm not pointing any fingers at anyone. Healer. No, I'm kidding. I'm not pointing any fingers at anyone. But the boss encounters are pretty decent. Absolutely pretty decent. So first up, we have Orbender Gorashan. Possibly the last Orbender. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I'm kind of going by this one. And the fight starts, or kind of like the precursor to the fight anyway, starts with a massive hint on what he should be doing when he tries to overcharge those, what look like traps. They're kind of like traps. They are definitely later on in the dungeon, traps for catching whelps, but different kind of viewpoint this time round. You have to disrupt those conduits, we'll call them conduits, that are around the side when he decides to try and draw power from one of them. You'll see that lightning link which he had to him at the start of the fight, and you literally jump off the platform and go down and click on to the conduit and then get back up. Now the reason why I say you go down and get back up is because the floor at the bottom is going to start to get filled up with these spikes, and these spikes have an aura around it, and they deal pretty moderate damage. But not only that, they tend to gravitate as well, so they sort of try and drag you into them. So if you hang around by them, you're just going to get more and more damage, and it's going to be a nightmare for the healer. Healers, get prepared to do lots of airway healing, because when you're at the top here, he will do like a shrapnel bomb, so to speak, which will damage everybody for moderate damage as well. But it's better that everyone's probably at the top platform fighting the boss than round about the bottom, which you can see people running around at. Whereas you could end up, because of the nature of the size of the platform, actually line of sighting the healer itself, because it could be more of a ball ache for the healer. So as a warlock, yay, what I decided to do was drop down Demonic Circle. So it's pretty easy for me to jump down to the bottom, take care of the conduits, and then zap back up. And that also allows my other teammates to get on with stuff, you know? And then we can just burn down the boss bit by bit. It was a pretty decent encounter for a first encounter of a dungeon. So yeah, we're relatively happy with that one. We moved through some trash, surprise, some more trash. But this second boss is literally right on the doorstep of the first one. So you're going for the first one, killing a couple of packs of trash, and then going straight into the second one. And yes, there is a dead body of Leroy Jenkins on the floor here. True facts. And that's going to come into play in the heroic version. Doesn't come into play in this version. But I think there's an achievement which is going to involve Leroy Jenkins, but on the regular version, he's dead. Now, the second boss, you can't help but pull him with a couple of bits of ads, trash as well. We absolutely would recommend taking care of the trash first instead of focusing on the boss. Couple of reasons why. First of all, the big ones do a cleave. So if there's multiple melees in your party, you're going to, you know, take some substantial damage. And secondly, they also do that big sort of like fire on the floor, which juts out and it hits for moderate. When I say moderate, no, I'd actually say moderate to high damage. It probably hit you for around 80, 90k, which is pretty substantial. Remember that we've got the item squish on. I think I'm rocking around, what, 211k health, something like that at the moment. Boss-wise, couple of things you got to be aware of. He'll drink a rejuvenation potion, which you must dispel immediately. If you do not dispel, he'll get 5% of his health back every 3 seconds for 30 seconds. So it's absolutely imperative that you do. He'll fixate. He'll do like a channeling fixate. He'll pick somebody, fixate onto them, but you can interrupt that. And if you interrupt it, it will break the fixate. Recommend that you do, because if he gets to one of the DPSs, he'll probably absolutely crush them. And also, while he's fixating onto them, they're going to be doing less damage. So you want your DPSs at maximum capacity. And also, if he fixates onto the healer, tusk. And then finally, he'll do something called, I think it's Vile Blood Serum. You'll see him blast off these blobs of poison which land on the floor. If you decide to stand in them, then you're going to take around 30k damage per tick, and they tick relatively quickly, once every 1 or 2 seconds or so. In actual fact, at the end of the fight, you'll see that a few people drop, bizarrely enough, because they just didn't move out quick enough, which is simply not good enough. So yeah, so crap on the floor. It's my Raid Boss 101 rule, but it's the #1 rule, surely, of dungeoning, raiding, everything. Get out of the crap. You deal with all that, and Kyrak shouldn't be difficult to dispatch. He should be a boss which you get down in pretty good speed, which then moves you on to an almighty wave of trash. Oi, 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 oi. Now, you can bypass quite a bit of it, but still, be very careful with your pulls, because there do seem to be packs very close together. So if you do mess up a pull, or you do cock up one of the patrols walking up and down, you could find yourself in a bit of a tricky situation. You could find yourself in a little bit of a situation where you're pulling additional packs in, and you really don't want to do that. So what we did is the tank did a really good job of pulling here. He'd pull a pack, and it'd actually take him down to the bottom, round the corner, and then we could just blast away, you know, no fear of stray AoE or stray dots or anything like that landing on another pack. And then we just took them out one by one. And we did find that you could creep around the corner as well, which was quite handy, because it just avoids another pack of trash. If you want to go uber cautious, you can get rid of that, but, you know, whatever. And then we get on to the next bit. Now, this was quite a bizarre fight. Once you've dealt with all the waves, as you've just seen us do, once you've dealt with all those waves, then the boss will come in straight away. We actually wiped because people, again, it was just kind of like Dungeon 101 rule, Raid Boss 101 rule. People just weren't paying attention to mechanics of the fight. So I shall go through them, and hopefully you will. The good thing is, though, if you do get to the boss stage, if you defeat all the 3 ways, get to the boss stage, then when he resets, he'll reset just as a boss. You don't have to go all through the gauntlet again, which is a small relief, considering how trash intensive this dungeon is. Now, we recommend, I say we, I'm using the royal we here, I recommend that you blow up his ad first. You blow up his two-headed thing first, because it'll do a nasty breath, which deals pretty substantial flame damage, puts a flame debuff on you, and also he'll do a poison attack. The boss itself does a charge. Get out of the way of the charge that when he focuses on somebody, because it'll hit everybody in the way, and he'll do moderate damage. He throws the axe, which you can see spinning around. This is what wiped the raid. People just weren't moving out of the way of the axe. It's got a pretty large area of effect, and it's spinning and it's moving. It's kind of like the Ravager axe, think from Nazgrim fight. It just looks a little bit prettier, so get out of the way of that, for goodness sake. And healers, do be careful, because he'll put a bleed onto the tank, so be careful for spiky damage. And also he'll go into a rage, potentially go into a rage, which increases damage and attack speed by 25%. So yeah, that damage that comes into the tank and to the raid could be pretty spiky. If you can deal with it pronto. But there we go. Boss goes down. Whatever ads... These ads aren't actually in the dungeon journal. We don't quite know where these came from, but he got down to around about 5% of his health, and suddenly a bucket load of ads came jumping down and try to attack us. But if you stick onto the boss, then they'll just run away at the end of the fight, as you saw. But we do get into the most intensive bit of trash here. You don't have to do what we did, and in actual fact, I didn't really want to go into the other room. I know it's a nod to the Beast. For people who have been in Upper Blackrock Spire before, in the lower version of it, when I say the lower level version of it, I should say, you had the Beast, of course. I think it's just a nod, or you know, potentially an opportunity for hunters to tame it, maybe. But it's not a boss. It's sort of like a mini boss that's just there as, from what I can establish, a homage. Nothing wrong with homages. I like homages. I like nods to it. But that whole section, from what I could see, you just didn't even have to deal with. Just didn't even have to deal with. The weird thing is, though, the way that the fight went, and the way that he was like knocking people back and putting on the fire on the floor and stuff like that, it was sort of like, mate, it feels like we are fighting a boss here, Blizz. You know, any chance you might drop us some valor, or, you know, chuck in another item for us to pick up for the group. But yeah, no. In actual fact, as you probably see, nothing is dropping any loot whatsoever. But let's get on to the next boss, which is Ragewind. And I've got to say, next two bosses, fantastic. This one is possibly the best fight I've come across in Warlords of Draenor so far. For a boss fight, I know I've only done 3 dungeons so far, but I think this is the #1 fight for me. And the reason why is, before I go into the details of the mechanics, I don't think this fight could feel any more of a classic RPG boss fight if it tried. You could have put this fight in Final Fantasy VII. You could have put it, you know what I mean? You could have put it in any bloody RPG out there, and it would have just suited it down to the ground. First of all, I like the fact we're fighting on a bridge. I like different sort of battlegrounds. I like it when we've got a little bit of variation, instead of just going into a room, fighting a boss, going into a room, fighting a boss. You know what I mean? So this was really cool that we're fighting it on the bridge. The big attack that you need to look out for is the Engulfing Flame, because if that hits you, it will hit you for huge damage. Not only that, it'll disorientate you for 3 seconds. So healers, you've got to be right on whoever gets hit by that and heal them up ASAP. I use my Burning Embers as best as possible. He'll do a Magma Spit, which of course leaves the crap on the ground. Move out of it! You know, not difficult to do. On about 50% health, it buggers off out of the fight, and all the whelps come in, as we've seen, and he'll start spitting down all that fiery crap on the floor. That hit you for between 20 to 40 odd K, so you know, it's moderate. It can be turn in from light damage to moderate damage if you're not too careful. And then we get to the epic ending of the fight. Once it's gone up, come back down again, the whelps have been, you burn it down for a little bit more health, and it'll sod off, and it'll repeat what it's done before. But then it lands on the bridge, and it starts just filling the bridge full of crap and walking towards you, and it just gets really ominous, and it's just awesome. Just absolutely awesome. It's a great kind of crescendo to this fight, which in itself already was pretty cool. And just imagine seeing this on heroic difficulty whets my appetite at the moment. And a final thing, healers, just to be careful of. She'll do a bleed effect, so look out for that. But she'll also do like a stacking rage. And to be honest with you, it can stack it to 4 times, which I think increases its damage by 40% per stack. So if it gets to 4 stacks, you know, it's going to be game over. But it was just, yeah, it's a really frantic end to the fight, and moving out of all the shite on the floor and then seeing it advance and this massive Proto-Drake in front of you. I loved it! Absolutely loved it. And I think we wiped twice on here because the tank was just taking some colossal damage and the healer couldn't quite keep up with it. But awesome fun. Awesome fun. And then that leads us into the final boss. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, which is rather cool. So we go through the typical UBRS room where the final boss of the vanilla version was. And we just clear out some trash there. But you'll notice in the top corner, of course, we had the hole in the wall, which now leads out into Blackrock itself, which I thought was awesome to see. And as I sort of like, you probably guessed from the way the camera angle pans around quite a bit, I was just like looking around going, wow, this is awesome. Because it just ended up at the top of Blackrock. Was just brilliant. Just a nice, and again, I love these little touches. There all seem to be great little nods to days gone by in World of Warcraft. And to be quite frank, they may be pulling at our heartstrings, they may be pulling at the nostalgia strings, but you know what? Couldn't give a flying fudge. Really could not give a flying fudge. It worked. They suckered me in, and it gives me that gooey feeling. So finally, we have Warlord Zeela. You, of course, came across her in Cataclysm, when we're in Twilight Highlands. And then she made a little bit of a cameo appearance in Siege of Orgrimmar when she was riding Galakras. That didn't go too well, did it, sweetheart? But we all wondered what was going to happen to her when she got blown off Galakras. And then she landed on the floor, and then she did like the rogue vanish. And then she was gone. But here she is. But she will make an appearance. Spoilers, by the way. She will make an appearance at the Dark Portal when it turns red. But you know, that's between thee and me, folks. Alright, so what abilities does she have? Well, first of all, if you can spread, if you are ranged, spread. Get away from people. Because she'll do something called a rebounding blade. Which if it hits you, if you're too close to people, then it'll start, guess what? Rebounding to other people. So just spread out, make sure you're out of the way. She'll fixate onto a target. Get out of the way of her when she fixates onto a target. Because that she'll do damage to everybody that gets in a way. Don't think the animation's quite correct for that in this fight. She just sort of like skulks off after them. Tanks. Be very careful. Again, this is something which is not mentioned in the Dungeon Journal, but when she does some of her attacks, it knocks you back. So we highly recommend that you tank her literally in the very centre of the platform. And about 50% of the health gone, she'll bugger off out the fight. Some ads will come in, which again, not mentioned in the Dungeon Journal, but you know. Some ads will come in. Dispatch them, because she will come back after a small period. And then after she has vanished, you'll get this Proto-Drake, which comes across into various corners, which you can see there, and starts spewing flame. Get out the fire, because it deals about 20 to 25k per tick. And it ticks once every couple of seconds, 1 or 2 seconds. So you could accrue some pretty nasty damage really, really quickly. Look at that, you see, look at there, I got caught. And I got a little bit disorientated about which way I should move because of the angle of the fire. And I ended up taking like 4 batterings of around 20k each. That's, you know, 20, 40, 60, 80. That's nearly half of my health just gone through that. So try and get out of them as quickly as humanly possible. And now we've got her on the ropes. We seem to have got her on the ropes with Bloodlust, or Hero in this case, because I'm playing Alliance, I think. The tank's been taking some pretty hefty damage. I think we've lost one of the DPSs, but I think they're going to get brought back into the fight. There they come. And yeah, it was a great way to end the fight. It's just really, really good. Kept you on your toes the whole way through. And just to sort of summarise my whole experience of Upper Blackrock, I loved it. I really did love it. I was never a massive fan of UBRS for the vanilla dungeon. I don't know why. It just didn't, you know, just didn't kind of pull at that. But going back in the way it is now and the sort of nostalgia element, it's just, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I know it's the first time I've done it. It took us an hour and a half to get through this. With all the editing, I'm telling you, it took an hour and a half. But it was great fun. And Blizz, kudos for some of those fights. Can't wait to see them in heroic difficulty. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. And I hope you enjoyed the vid. Please do like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch.tv. They're still doing the fire! /Heal versus Babyface for live Warlords of Draenor beta streaming, and I shall be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care, everybody. Bye bye.